Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back. I am Elizabeth. This is Reading Riley, and today I'm going to tell you about the books that I read in October. This is a reading wrap-up. Let's do it. I read 5 books in October. It was a slower reading month for me. I'm definitely not on track to hit my Goodreads goal for this year, which this might be the first year that I haven't hit 100 books. I think right now I'm at like 65. I'm pretty far behind. Next year I will be lowering that goal as opposed to pushing myself to read more because I'm doing what I can and we're all doing what we can right now, and that's good enough. Okay, that's good enough. So most of them are horror. I do have one that I'm calling Unhinged Lit Fic. As usual, I'm going to tell you about them starting with the one that I rated the lowest, and then we're going to move up to the one that I rated the highest. I do recommend all of these. All of these are 3 stars or higher, which is my bracket for whether or not I would recommend them. All the books that I read were generally good. My lowest rating was a 3-star, and then I have 2 3.5-star books. I have 1 4-star book and 1 4.5-star book to tell you about. 3 of these I listened to via Libby, which would be my library app. 1 I listened to on Everand, and then the last one I listened to as a Macmillan Audio Advanced Listeners copy. 2 of these are brand new releases that came out in September or October. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite book of this month was, especially if it's horror, thriller, feminist fiction. I am reading currently some thrillers. We're getting back into the thrillers, so I'm excited for that. I will be making a vlog for that one as well, so keep your eyes and ears open for that. Let's start out talking about my 3-star book. That is actually a sequel, and that is Authority by Jeff VanderMeer. This is book number 2 in the Southern Reach, formerly trilogy, now the Southern Reach series, because it has just had an additional 4th story that has been published. This is book number 2. Book number 1 is, of course, Annihilation. I wish I had the matching ones. I don't. I talked about this recently on a video that I made recommending kind of my version of cosmic horror books, and this, of course, is in there as well. Some people would call these sci-fi, some people would call it horror or cosmic horror, and it's genre bending, so it's hard to say. If you're unaware about Annihilation in general, there's also a movie adaptation with Natalie Portman that is really good, but a little bit different from the book. There's this piece of land called Area X, and it has been affected by something. We don't know what. We don't know if it's like a comet or a meteor hit it, or if it's alien, or if it's some kind of thing that we just don't know about yet. We don't know what it is, but it's the same rules that we have doesn't apply in Area X, and so they've set up this entire governmental system in order to explore it, research it. But the thing is, when people go into Area X, most of them just don't come back out at all, but the ones that do come back out don't remember, or there's something terribly wrong with them that's preventing them from telling their story, etc. This one, I feel like alone is much better than it is with this so far. This felt like a setup book for book 3, and now I'm curious if all of those questions didn't get answered in book 3 that led Jeff VanderMeer to write a book 4. Like, am I going to get the satisfaction out of book 3 that I wanted out of book 2 that I didn't get? I don't know, because we're following an entirely different protagonist in this one. We're following the new director of the Southern Reach, and it's a male perspective. In Annihilation, we're following all women in this one, so that's a big difference for me anyway from the books that I like to read. But this character is compelling. His name's Control, or his nickname is Control. This is more of kind of like internal and like the bureau side of things and like the hierarchies and who knows what about Area X as he's trying to figure out what's going on. So if you read the first one, then you know who Ghostbird is. I wanted more of Ghostbird in this book. We did get some, but not enough, because it's shifting the narrative. It does lead you to get invested in these new characters, though not as much as I was in the characters from Annihilation. Am I going to continue reading on? Yes, I am. But this feels like a 3-star to me. It's not doing everything that Annihilation did for me. And I'm hoping, though, that my efforts have not been in vain, and that if I continue on, that it's going to become something more that I didn't expect, that it's going to go somewhere interesting. I hope. I don't know. We'll see. But that's kind of all I can give away about this one without spoiling all of Annihilation, and I don't want to do that for you because Annihilation is so good. My 3.5-star book that I want to talk to you is actually the Midnight Society Book Club pick for October as well, and that was Big Swiss by Jen Beagin. I actually was reading this at a Starbucks, and some guy was like, that looks like a woman's book, and I was like, yeah, it kind of is. Yeah, it's a girl's book, I'm pretty sure. This is the one that I'm calling the lit fic. It's a little bit unhinged. It's kind of got a romance quality to it, but doesn't have that formula that a romance would have. It's more slice of life. Yeah, kind of like slice of life of this woman, Greta. Two main characters, Greta and Big Swiss. Greta is a transcriptionist. She works in the small town of Hudson, New York, which apparently, this is blinding you, I'm gonna put it up here. Everybody's in everybody's business. Everybody knows what's what about each other. She's just moved here though. She's moved in with this woman named Sabine, who lives in this old Dutch farmhouse that she bought with her midlife crisis when she got a divorce from her husband, and it has like thousands of honeybees that live inside it. There are bugs everywhere. There's no heat. A metaphor, I think, for Greta's life, maybe. Greta's how she's handling her problems and her trauma. And I do like that we're talking about therapy in here. We're talking about queerness and how maybe that's different for some people than other people, discovering that. There is a lot in here also about parasocial relationships and them being one-sided and how that can so easily turn into voyeurism. And there's some play in here with that as well. I did have the live show discussion with my IRL friend Chase, as well as Deja from Deja's Book World. I'll link that above and below if you're interested in checking out that more in-depth conversation, because we did really have a very nuanced conversation in here. There are some things that I really enjoyed about this, about the writing. It was kind of quirky in a way that was fun to read, but also that gave me a little bit of like mental whiplash. So I sit on kind of both sides of the fence for a lot of the arguments for this book, but I do think that there are some people that are really going to love this. What I liked about it, this town of Hudson, New York, was basically its own character. It felt quaint. It felt like these people were obviously like so unique. Almost too much so, unbelievably so sometimes. Greta is in her mid-40s and she's a transcriptionist for a sex therapist who calls himself Ohm. Works from home, just puts her headphones on, transcribes, but she gets like this little peek into these people's lives. One day she's walking her dog in the park and she hears a familiar voice, and it's this woman who she has been transcribing therapy sessions of. She's calling her Big Swiss. And so there's this moral, ethical dilemma where she's like, oh shoot, we met in person, I need to stay away, but she's so interested in her and she's so intrigued by her that she like is compelled to form this relationship with her, but she can't tell her who she really is, so she makes up a fake name and chaos ensues. They both have a lot of trauma in their pasts, and there's a lot, I think, in here about the way that our trauma affects us and how that makes us become a different person. We grow into pathways that we follow when we're experiencing that trauma, and sometimes we can like get lost. Yeah, I do want to say some questions were raised about the way she handled the queerness of our characters. So if that's something it is hard for you to read about, then maybe avoid this one. It didn't seem like she was an author who cares what people think. If she's going to make some people angry, then she will for the sake of the character. And in that way, it reminded me of Otessa Moshfegh. So I think if you are an Otessa Moshfegh girly, you might get along with this one. Before I move on to my next 3.5-star book, I do want to just mention this month's Midnight Society Book Club pick, Model Home by Rivers Solomon. I know this video is coming out late, but if you still have time, you're welcome to join us. The live show for this is Sunday, December 1st. That is the Sunday after Thanksgiving at 1 p.m. Central Time, and I'm going to be discussing this with my friend Bree from over at Locked Booktition. Very excited to get her opinion on this. This seems to be a haunting novel, but also it seems to have a lot of social commentary, so I'm very excited about that. It's right up my alley. Oh, and it's also set in Dallas, where I live in DFW, so that's exciting for me. So we're following this family of siblings, 3 siblings. It looks like after they grew up, they all just stayed as far away from this house that they grew up in Dallas as possible, because really weird things would happen there. It says, was it some cosmic trial or a demonic rite of passage into upper middle class? Whatever it was, the Maxwells, steered by their formidable mother, stayed put, unwilling to abandon their home. Terrors and trauma be damned. As adults, the siblings finally got away from the horrors of home, leaving their parents alone in the house. But when the news of their parents' death arrives, Esri is forced to return to Texas with their sisters, Eve and Emmanuel, to reckon with the family's past and present and to find out what happened while they were away. Rivers Solomon has turned the haunted house novel on its head. Unbridled, raw, and daring, Model Home is a story of secret histories uncovered and of a family battling for the right to live, grieve, and heal amid the terrors of contemporary American life. Ugh, that sounds so good. So anyway, if you still have time to read it, it's not incredibly long. Let's see. Just under 300 pages, so 280 pages or so. Pick that one up. My next 3.5-star book is, I actually read 2 books by this author this month. This one was her debut, and then I also read her new release. The first one is The Return, and this is, of course, by Rachel Harrison. I discovered last year how much I love this author, and I think now I've caught up on all of her books. Am I caught up? I'll have to double check that. So The Return has had a lot of mixed reviews. People that love Rachel Harrison even seem to be kind of mixed on what they think of this one. Knowing that before I went into it, I was expecting to feel very divided or very strongly one way or another about this, which I do. I mean, generally, I love it. It's Rachel Harrison. I don't really get why people were upset about this one. I like it. I think she's so good at relationships. She's so good at creating these characters that feel real, and the banter is always so right on. Like, it feels like a natural conversation, and she manages to make everybody feel seen. This is the story about a group of friends who are reunited after one of them goes missing for 2 years and then mysteriously returns. Our main character is Elise. She is the least successful in like a traditional financial view of the term of all of her friends. And so she's a little bit resentful of that. Julie was the one she was closest to. Julie's the one who disappeared for 2 years, and she came back. No one has seen them. And then we also have Molly. Molly lost one of her legs to cancer as a kid, and so she kind of overcompensates for her not having a leg by having this really strong personality. Like, I can do everything for myself. No one can tell me what to do type of thing. And then you have May, who is in the fashion industry. She is so loud and boisterous, and she is kind of like the head honcho. She also has albinism and she's queer, so she kind of like is just loud and proud. I loved May so much. So she is the one that organizes this weekend, this girls' getaway, and it's gonna be in the Catskills in New York, and they're all meeting up together for the first time after these 2 years apart. When they get there and they see Julie and how different she is, they start kind of skirting around certain questions. We get some backstory as to how they became friends and the way that they talk to each other, the things they tell each other, and the things that they don't. And we're trying to figure out what is going on with Julie. It gets really wild towards the end. So I guess I kind of understand, like, if you think about that pitch, you really wouldn't expect it to go where it does go. But for me, it's all about these characters. This being her debut novel, I could tell that the writing felt a little bit more forced, or like she was trying harder than she does in some of her newer books to pick the right, like, eloquent word. But it didn't matter because all of that dialogue, that banter that she does so well is still in this. She's so good at that. She's such an empathetic writer, and she has such an empathetic voice. It reminds me of Matt Haig in that way. I would say Matt Haig is the king of empathy. She could be. She might be the queen of empathy. I don't know. I don't know. Just saying. I would compare this one to Stephen King's Joyland because this is kind of a like coming of age story where it's a little bit spooky and haunty, but it's also kind of that slice of life thing. And then I would also recommend My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix for this one because of that friendship and that bond between women and friends. That's all in there as well. And then of course it has that like spook factor. And like, woo. Next, I want to talk to you about my 4-star book for this month, and that is American Rapture by C.J. Leede. This is the author of Maeve Fly, which I've not read yet, though I'm more interested now because I did enjoy this one so much, and also I think they're different genres, so it should be interesting to see another side of the same author. This one being like Unhinged Women, Extreme Horror, from what I understand anyway. And then this one is categorized as dystopian, adult dystopian, which I think is arguable that it's not, that it's actually YA. But we'll get into that. This is a brand new release. It came out October 15th. I picked it up on the 20th. I did get this from Macmillan as an advanced listener's copy. So thank you, Macmillan, for sending that to me. We're following this young girl, a 16-year-old girl, Sophie. A virus is spreading. I'm just going to read to you what it says because it's very short and concise, and I'll go from there. A virus is spreading across America, transforming the infected and making them feral with lust. Okay, Sophie is a good Catholic girl. There's also a religious aspect to this. And she must traverse the hellscape of the Midwest to try to find her family while the world around her burns. Along the way, she discovers there are far worse fates than dying a virgin. And that does sum it up, but also there's so much more to this. Sophie is very much giving abnegation from Divergent. She's grown up so sheltered that she really honestly doesn't know anything about the world. She grew up with her brother, Noah, her twin. Last year, something happened to Noah. People came in the night and took him away, and we don't know what happened or really why until the story continues on, and we get little like bits of it throughout the story. The setting is rural Wisconsin. One thing I liked about this is that while this does seem kind of tropey, the way that CJ Leede writes and the way that she divulges information is really well done. I don't think she ever says that Sophie and her brother are twins. But what she does say, how does she reveal that? She said something about our birth. Oh yeah, she said our birthday was coming up. So obviously now we know they have the same birthday, they're twins. She never actually says it. And she divulges information a lot in that way as a reader. It's not so like shoving information down your throat. You know what I mean? Especially in something like this where it's going to require a lot of world building because you're setting up this dystopian society, especially for our main character. There's this version of COVID, and then it's when it gets mixed with syphilis or something similar, some kind of STD, it's called Sylvia, and it creates this super virus that is now being spread across America. Strangely, nowhere else. It's not catching, it's not getting in any other country, only in America. 80% of the people get to this manic mania phase where they have this complete, what do they call it? Sexual mania and fever. And that has a 0% survival rate. We're following this 16-year-old. She doesn't know anything about the world. She's grown up basically in this pious religious household where she's only allowed to read nonfiction books. So her favorite thing to do is to go to the library on the weekend and go to the nonfiction section, and she just closes her eyes, and whatever her finger lands on, that's what she reads. She has a rule for herself that she has to finish it. She has to read it cover to cover. And so she's really smart. She knows all of these like survival tricks and like stuff like that just from reading random nonfiction books. But she's giving Katniss Everdeen because she doesn't know she's beautiful. She looks in the mirror and she's like, oh, I have boobs, and she's discovering her body. And, you know, I think the reason that this is specifically under adult is because obviously of the level of f***ery that comes along with people that have sexual mania as a result of a pandemic. There is going to be sexual assault. There is going to be things that are not consented for, and it does go there, and it's really, really messed up. So if you have any kind of trigger for sexual assault or you need a content warning for that, then stay far, far, far away from this because it's rife. It's rife with sexual assault, okay? Please know that. There's also a dog in this story. Not gonna say anything, just this look. Do we love him? Yeah. We do. CJ. This looks for you. So the graphic nature of this is so disturbing that it almost feels like you have to say, okay, this is not for kids. But our main character is 16. Our main character is so incredibly naive. It's far-fetched for an adult audience. So I don't know. I don't know if it's perfect for adults because they can like feel like it's okay that this character isn't really catching on because they're so young. Or, I mean, I don't want to recommend this to young adults because of what it is. So I don't know. I guess it's adult. It's adult. CJ Leede titles her chapters. Does she do it? I wonder if she does it in Maeve Fly too. Oh no, these are numbered. Interesting. So that's a new thing for her. Loved the titled chapters, CJ Leede. So keep doing that. Really loved that. I related to this particularly because I grew up Catholic, and so the whole Catholic guilt and shame really, really hit home for me. If you struggle with that, like this can help you kind of tear that apart, I think, and pick at it at the pieces. Because there's a whole lot in here about making choices for yourself, about guilt, about shame, and about how religion can make us feel like, ugh, I don't know. There's definitely some negative talk on Catholicism for sure. I would say that CJ Leede probably was raised Catholic as well, and also probably is no longer Catholic, such as myself. So anyway, there's just so much in there about that as well. I would highly compare this one to The Violence by Delilah S. Dawson. So similar in that there is this kind of pandemic. This one obviously makes people not sexually violent, but just violent in general. And in the same way, it's like a pandemic story. This one's not religious per se, but it's very feminist as well. 3 generations of abused women must navigate their chilling new reality as a mysterious epidemic of violence sweeps the nation in this compelling novel of self-discovery, legacy, and hope. So this one's really good, slow burn, but well worth it. I think I give it 5 stars, if not 4 stars. And then another one that this reminded me of, And Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin. This one is another one that I talked about in my cosmic horror book recommendation video. This again, there is a pandemic sweeping the nation that in this case changes your perception of reality and makes you think that people who are not afflicted with this are zombies. So you can imagine the chaos that would ensue from that. Overall, I thought it was well written. I'm really excited to read more from CJ Leede. I'm especially excited to check out Maeve Fly now because I know she's a good writer. Let's move on to my 4.5 star book. This is the highest rated of the books that I read in October, and that is So Thirsty, also by Rachel Harrison. This is her newest book that she came out with. Just came out on September 10th. And I listened to the audio. I did get this one from Libby from the library. Like so many of Rachel Harrison's other books, has like a themed monster situation. This is the vampire books. I do have some critiques, but otherwise, like Rachel Harrison's just that author for me. Like I just feel like she gets me. You know what I mean? A woman must learn to take life by the throat after a night out irrevocably changes her life. Okay, so we're following Sloane Parker, and she's dreading her birthday, and she's, I think, exactly my age, 36 or 37. Her husband surprises her with this birthday weekend getaway, but it's not with him, it's with her best friend, Naomi. And her first thought is that he's trying to get her out of the house because, guess what? He's a cheater. And she knows this but hasn't said anything to him because she's grown very complacent in her life. She just kind of lets it go. She just lets everything go. If she was an Enneagram, she'd be type 6, the loyalist. Oh, Sloane is also really obsessed with tragedy. Like she gets into these modes where she starts researching tragedies like, you know, the Titanic, or I can't even remember what the examples were, but just terrible things that happened in the past. She wants to know every detail. She gets so hung up on it. And I think it's more about choices that people make and trying to avoid making choices that end in disaster. And by doing so, she's just making herself smaller and smaller. So anyway, they have this night out, they become vampires. I don't think that is a spoiler. It's a vampire book, like it's obvious. They're gonna turn into vampires. I love all the characters in this. I love the friendship more than anything. The friendship between Naomi and Sloane is the best thing because it's not perfect, and you see the ugly parts of it. You see the part that is not cute, and you see when they start doubting each other, but then they work their way through it. They always have each other's backs no matter what. It's very much trying to capture that feeling of unconditional love, but in the form of friendship. It was less of a romance than I anticipated, but in a good way. There's still some romance in there as well, but it's more about like finding yourself. Although this was more about transformation, similarly to Such Sharp Teeth. than it was about immortality or existentialism. When I think of a vampire book, I think it's going to have something to say about existentialism, and we do get into the beginning a lot about how Sloane is worried about aging, but that part doesn't really make it back around full circle, I don't think. She never really comes to that place where she's like, oh, it never mattered. So maybe that part didn't quite hit home. Overall, it had a very satisfying ending. There was a little bit of a twist at the end. Of course, we don't go into a Rachel Harrison for the twists, but it was a nice little added extra thing that I didn't quite see coming, and the way it ended felt very satisfying. It felt almost like the end of a movie like Now and Then, where it's like, ooh, we kind of get that call back to the beginning, and then they're like, ah ha ha, winky winky, and then it like fades to black. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was horrific. It was lovely at the same time. I don't think this is one that you have to wait till next spooky season to read. I think you could read this at any point during the year, and it would be a fun, entertaining, and empathetic read that you could really enjoy. So especially if you are wanting something that is going to touch on that feeling of complacency, maybe not trying because failing would be worse type of theme or feeling. If you want to dissect that, then absolutely read this. Do it 100%. 4.5 stars, just because it didn't quite bring all that like existentialism all the way around, but generally loved it so much. Might be one of my favorite new Rachel Harrisons. I love all of them. I don't know if I could ever rank them. Let me know in the comments if you want me to try to rank them, and I'll maybe consider putting myself through it. As a reminder, the Midnight Society Book Club will not have a meeting in December just because it's kind of chaotic, but do look for a video that I will release in December that will have our January, February, and March book picks for you to get ready for the Midnight Society Book Club 2025. Oh my gosh, it's already happening. It's so wild. And again, if you're interested in reading with us this month in November, we are reading Model Home by Rivers Solomon, and I'm going to be reading this with Bree at Locked Booktition. The live show discussion for this, again, will be on my channel here on YouTube, live on December 1st at 1 p.m. Central Time. And if you want to vote, we are now letting you vote as to whether or not this gets accepted or initiated or inducted into the Midnight Society Book Club. Look for my Instagram to do that within the 24 hours before that live show. At any point, I'll have a poll in the stories, and you can go ahead and let me know what you voted. That's going to factor into the overall vote of whether or not it gets inducted. That said, y'all, don't forget, life is so short. Oh my gosh. And life's hard these days. It honestly, like, it's been tough. It's been a tough November. It's been a tough many years, let's be real. But we're gonna get through this. I'm here for you. And don't forget that life is short. So read Riley. Cheers and goodbye.